promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 p.m. in Abuja. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world on wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. First, our top stories. Late former President of Nigeria, Buhari, to be buried 2 p.m. today under Islamic rites.
We seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgiveness for the Muhammad Buhari.
What I will remember about him is when he was ruling, things are not that hard in the country.
I can remember him for number one, for his cashless policy, make Nigeria to live below poverty level.
Ghana's election watchdog Cadell demands urgent probe into brutality and alleged irregularities in Ablekuma rerun parliamentary polls.
The violence and the disturbing incidents that marked the Ablekuma North rerun is something that is deeply troubling, not just for those who are affected by the events, but for every Ghanaian who actually believes in democracy.
Liberian Senate begins confirmation of nominee for Chief Justice, and Senegalese President Bashir Diomaye Faye receives National Dialogue Report. Please stay tuned for details of these stories and more.
Here is Imo Edit with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. Well, let's begin in Nigeria, where about an hour ago, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu received the body of the former leader Muhammadu Buhari in Daura, Katsina State, Northwest region, in preparation for the burial at 2 p.m. Nigerian time. The late general, who served Nigeria both as military ruler from 1983 to 1985 and civilian president from 2015 to 2023, died on Sunday afternoon in a London hospital. The Janaza funeral prayer will take place at 2 p.m. in line with Islamic rites, and the body will be interred at Buhari's private residence in Daura. President Tinubu will be joined by a host of dignitaries, including former Niger Republic President Muhammadu Yusufu, several current and former African leaders, and senior Nigerian officials. Sources close to the funeral committee said dozens of foreign leaders were expected to confirm their attendance by this morning. Meanwhile, President Tinubu declared a 7-day national mourning period with flags flying at half-mast and announced a public holiday today in honor of the late leader. Former Presidents Goodluck Jonathan and Nana Akufo-Addo of Ghana also paid their respect during a visit to the bereaved family in London. Meanwhile, Nigerians have been reacting to the death of former President Muhammadu Buhari, who passed away on Sunday in London. Well, many remember him for the austerity measures the country passed through. Others expressed profound memories of him. Take a listen.
It's a great loss to Daurawa, Katsina, and the entire nation. In fact, his demise is really touching, heart-touching. We will never forget.
I can remember him for the hospitality he caused to the whole Nigeria. He made Nigeria to live a bearable life. Number one, for his cashless policy, which he introduced during that election period, make Nigeria to live below poverty level. Many died. Many were frustrated. And well, though he is dead, now nothing we can say about him. May he so rest in perfect peace.
Wherever you go, you will see people are praying for Buhari. We seek Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgiveness for the Muhammad Buhari.
What I will remember about him is when he was ruling, things are not that hard in the country. The petrol, things are moving on very fine. Yes.
Well, those were reactions of some Nigerians over the death of former President Muhammadu Buhari. Well, in a short while, we will be joining our correspondent in Abuja, who will be bringing us all the latest and the preparations as regards the burial, which will be happening in the next 1 hour. In the meantime, let's take you to Benin, where the Constitutional Court officially unveiled on Monday the calendar of the general elections, which are scheduled for the year 2026. The publication marks an advanced stage in the electoral process in a spirit of openness, transparency, and institutional rigor. According to the new calendar, Beninese voters will be called on to polls twice in 2026 for the legislative elections set for January 11, then for the presidential election, which will take place in 2 rounds on April 12 and May 10, respectively. The document published by the court is presented in 3 parts. Activities common to the 2 elections, a specific calendar for the legislative elections, and another devoted to the presidential election. Cross-cutting actions include the establishment of a digital platform for the submission of candidacies by political parties and electoral delegates, as well as the creation of a centralized electoral database. The reception of candidates for the legislative election is set for September 2025, accompanied by an electoral campaign that will run from December to January. As far as the presidential election, the submission of files, the campaign and the medical examinations of candidates will be staggered between 2025 and March 2026 in accordance with the constitutional requirements. Well, crossing over to Ghana, where the Coalition of Domestic Election Observers, CODEO, is raising concerns about violent incidents, vote buying and security lapses that occurred during last Friday's parliamentary rerun in the Ablekuma North constituency. In a strongly worded statement, CODEO condemned acts of intimidation directed at voters, poll workers, journalists and 2 female politicians. The Observer Group is calling for immediate investigations and prosecution of all those responsible for these actions. CODEO also expressed concerns about the response of the Ghana Police Service and warned that unchecked political violence could threaten the stability of Ghana's democracy. Nadia Dated in Accra reports.
The Coalition of Domestic Election Observers, CODEO, stated that although it did not deploy its observers during the July 11 Ablekuma North parliamentary election rerun, its monitoring of traditional and social media reports showed worrying incidents from intimidation of voters and journalists to the assault of 2 female politicians. While commending the Ghana Police Service for interdicting an officer accused of assaulting a journalist, CODEO is urging swift action to apprehend and prosecute all involved in the violence. It also took a swipe at political leaders of both the NDC and the NPP for inflaming tensions with incendiary language, describing their conduct as a threat to Ghana's fragile democracy, especially after the violent 2024 elections. Joseph Utifrempong is coordinator at the CODEO Secretariat.
Generally, the violence and the disturbing incident that marked the Ablekuma North rerun is something that is deeply troubling, not just for those who are affected by the events, but for every Ghanaian who actually believes in democracy, rule of law, and peaceful political participation. We found out that some of the incidents that occurred, the police service that they were meant to ensure peaceful voting, they were somehow there, and some of them looked unconcerned when some of these violent activities occurred at some of the polling stations.
CODEO has called on President John Dramani Mahama and the Police Council to probe these incidents urgently ahead of the upcoming Akwitia by-election. The coalition further called on political parties, security agencies, the Electoral Commission and the judiciary to reflect, reform and act decisively against election violence and political vigilantism. For WADR, Nadia Dated, Accra.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Well, let's take a trip down to the Gambia as public hearings officially commence into the sale and disposal of assets linked to former President Yahya Jammeh. These proceedings have been conducted by a special select committee of the Gambian National Assembly. The committee started its work on Monday and is expected to continue for approximately 120 days. Sankli Janko has more details in this report.
The first witness appearing before the committee on Monday was Attorney General and Minister of Justice Dauda Jallow, who provided detailed explanations about the formation of commissions under the Gambian laws.
They are presidential in nature because under Section 200 of the Constitution is the president that establishes commissions of inquiry, precisely investigate, make findings, and recommend to government. The commissions are set under the Constitution and they are vested with powers of the High Court with respect to compelling attendance of witnesses, production of documents, and also making interim orders. That's a constitutional provision.
The Justice Minister faced the questions on a range of issues, including the role of the ministry in shaping the Commission's mandate, the legal framework under Section 200 of the Constitution, and how the receiver, commissioners, and lead counsels were selected. Committee members also sought answers on asset preservation, financial oversight, and the mechanisms in place to ensure transparency and accountability throughout the process. Abdullah Sise is the chairman of the National Assembly Select Committee, who explains what the parliamentary committee sought to do.
What the committee is doing is trying to find facts, and these facts are relevant for the public as well. As part of our job and the mandate that is being established on this committee is to bring on witnesses to come and testify, just like you did.
Meanwhile, the public hearings are expected to continue over the next 4 months, during which several key witnesses will be summoned as the committee works to uncover the full story behind Jammeh-era asset recoveries and sales. President Adama Barrow, in a recent national address, pledged to implement the recommendations that will emerge from the committee's final report. The hearing continues today, Tuesday, July 15, as more witnesses are expected to testify.
Sankule Janko filed that report. In more judicial matters, the Liberian Senate has officially commenced the confirmation hearing for Associate Justice Yame Kwikwi Gbese, the nominee for the position of Chief Justice of the Republic. The hearing began on Monday before the Senate Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights, Claims and Petitions as part of the Senate's constitutional duty to uphold judicial appointments. Judge Gbese, who is currently serving as an Associate Justice for the Supreme Court, was nominated by President Joseph Boakai following the retirement of Chief Justice Sie Enyene Yo, who reached the constitutional retirement age of 70 on June 26, 2025. WDL's Monrovia correspondent Ibrahim Parker has the details.
During his confirmation hearing, Justice Yomi Gbese emphasized the urgent need for reform, advocating for a comprehensive review of Liberia's 1986 constitution to align it with contemporary realities. He pointed out that several provisions in the current constitution are outdated and contradictory to modern legal developments.
I know why in West Africa now where you see a traitor as a mandatory. No, but we have in our constitution, they're making the court inefficient. They never know what. Because population are increased, crime are increased, activity of people are increased, business are increased. So issues now going to court are many. Now you have a situation that the court is tied down. That is the situation all over the country. We need to visit our constitution.
The nominated Chief Justice also highlighted pressing issues such as line disputes and delays in judiciary processes which hindered ordinary Liberians from accessing justice. He stated that addressing these concerns would be part of his reform measures if he is confirmed as the country's next Chief Justice.
The legal profession is falling apart. When I joined the legal profession 27 years ago, everybody was operating for a law firm and a law firm was responsible for their actions. But today, everybody practically going, we need to reform the system to make sure that if you are practicing lawyer, you are practicing for a law firm and that law firm is responsible. But to a liar saying we are losing a lot of grip on our profession, and I can assure that that's one of the things I'm going to be working with.
The decision regarding Gbese's appointment now rests with the majority members of the Senate Committee on Judiciary, who will later vote on his confirmation during plenary sections. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Well, let's take you back to Nigeria's capital, Abuja, where Usman Amara, our correspondent, is on standby to bring us the latest as regards the activities leading to the burial of former late President Muhammadu Buhari. Usman, good afternoon from Dakar. If you can hear me, quickly bring us the latest as to what you can tell us about activities before his burial, which should be in the next, say, 40 to 50 minutes.
Yes, thank you very much, Imo, for linking up. Of course, as you've said off microphone, all roads today leads to Daura from every part of Nigeria. That is the hometown of the late President Muhammadu Buhari, who, as we have just been informed, the plane carrying his remains from London just touched down a few minutes ago, and all other procedures are being fulfilled as far as documentations are concerned. But I can tell you that from the reports we have seen on national TV that are covering it live, it is, a fully packed town today for the late president. And any moment from now, as you have said, the interment will begin. As already we have also learned that the grave in which the late president is going to be finally interred has already been prepared at this very moment.
Well, what are some of the profound things you've heard Nigerians say? I know we got a few voices of Nigerians who, some talked about the austerity measures that they will always remember him for that, and others, just wished him well, whether he did well or not. What are the other views that you have heard around you?
Well, like you said, it's actually a mixed reaction, generally speaking, and it depends on who you are talking to. But generally, there is no clear-cut, perspective as to whether the man was good or bad, because it's a mix of both. Like I said, depending on who you speak on. But of course, a man can only be measured by the promises he makes, and the promises he made in this case, in reference to the late president, when he came into power in 2015, he did promise he made promises on 3 key areas, that is security, economy, and corruption. But of course, up until the time he left power in May 29, all 3 of these indices were in the negative as far as every measuring yardsticks are concerned, and therefore, for those, especially like I said, who decide to say, well, let the old man rest, he's gone now, that is just about it. But of course, there are a number of other things that some others who we have spoken to have also mentioned that the man can be praised for. For example, there are people who said, as at the time the man came into power in 2014, Nigeria was almost at the brink of collapse. When you talk about economy, you talk about the security situation back then, that he did his best to steer the country to step into some form of stability. The same thing, others are also saying, as far as anti-corruption is concerned, there were people who had to run away from the country because of the reputation that the man brought on board. But few years down the line of his administration, people realized that it wasn't as people thought. And even those who ran away from the country came back, and some, notably that I know, came back into the country and even had the guts to contest for elections. And therefore, you could say that it's actually a mixed pot of good and the bad.
Indeed. Usman, thank you so much. And I will be reaching out to you in our subsequent bulletins for update. You're listening to Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM Dakar. Here's a reminder of the top stories. Late former President of Nigeria Buhari to be buried 2 p.m. today under Islamic rites. Ghana's election watchdog Kodeo demands urgent probe into brutality and alleged irregularities in Ablekuma's rerun parliamentary polls. Liberian Senate begins confirmation of nominee for Chief Justice. And still ahead, Senegalese President Diomaye Faye receives National Dialogue Report. We do have a guest interview and sport news. Please stay with us.
West Africa Democracy Radio. It's you speaking.
We're streaming live on wadr.org, and we urge you to join our live streams on YouTube and Facebook. Here in Senegal, President Diomaye Faye has received the final report from the dialogue aimed at reforming the country's political system. The president expressed his appreciation for the consensus achieved on various reforms. Additionally, he addressed the controversy surrounding Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko's recent comment in which he criticized a crisis of authority. Augustine Kule reports.
From the onset, the Senegalese president welcomed the conclusions of this political dialogue held last June. President Diomaye Faye announced the establishment of a monitoring committee to translate the various recommendations into concrete measures.
I am delighted with the solid consensus on the rationalization of political parties, the reform of legislation on political parties, the permanent and automatic registration of first-time voters in the electoral file at the time of enrollment for national identity card, the creation of an independent body for election management. These results, for which I congratulate you, mark a decisive tone for the institutional stability of our country.
Additionally, the Senegalese head of state addressed the recent statement by Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko, who denounced a crisis of authority. President Diomaye Faye calls for efforts to meet the expectations of the Senegalese people.
The Prime Minister said it. He's my friend. I have no problem with him. What's urgent right now is to focus on the expectations of the Senegalese people. The only fight worth fighting is the fight against difficulties that the Senegalese endure, that we ourselves endure as leaders who are struggling with a difficult legacy. When you inherit a difficult financial situation, you need maximum concentration to find solutions, because that is where the Senegalese are waiting for us.
As a reminder, last Friday, Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko called for greater firmness from the head of state and demanded an end to the attacks against him.
A report from WDL's Ouagadougou correspondent Martin Caban, voiced by Augustine Coley.
This is the newspaper review. Stay abreast and find out what the top stories are in your country.
This is the newspaper review.
The newspaper review.
Well, we'll take you to Monrovia as we join Abraham Parker for the newspaper review.
This edition of Press Review begins with the Daily Observer newspaper that goes with these headlines. No request made for Liberia to take U.S. deportees. The government of Liberia denies the U.S. request for deported migrants, focuses on mineral agreements with U.S., maintains diplomatic relations with both U.S. and China for economic benefit. In photo is Liberian President Joseph Boakai and Donald Trump. Government welcomes July 17 protest. Well, the government of Liberia, as reported, has approved the July 17 protest. The organizers have informed the country that the protest will go for 3 whole days, and Boakai pays a touching tribute to late Buhari, highlighting his transition from military leader to democracy. Up next is the Inquirer newspaper. Justice Wese's judiciary consistency questioned during confirmation, but yesterday, members of the Liberian Senate Committee on Judiciary, Claims and Petition started the confirmation hearing of the Chief Justice Designate Yomi Kokwebese, and during that confirmation hearing, he said he will be consistent in making sure to initiate reform within the judiciary. He also talked about a thorough revision of Liberia's 1986 constitution. The decision is before members of that committee whether or not confirm. Liberians patiently await that outcome. Still on the inquiry, defense withdraws bail bond for Eric and others. Our next and last stop is the Heritage newspaper. No rotation of rascals. President Boakai warns vows to eliminate corrupt officials. Well, that does it for this Tuesday's edition of Press Review from Monrovia, Liberia. And it's back to you in studio.
Many thanks, Abraham Parker.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Well, we'll continue our focus on the life and time of late Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari in this segment, who will be buried in the next 1 hour, according to Islamic Rite, in his hometown, Daura, Katsina State, northwest of the country. Our guest, a public affairs analyst, Jido Joe, analysis comments of Nigerians over the circumstances surrounding his death, especially being in a foreign hospital in London.
Specifically to the issue you raised, I've also read and saw comments to that effect. But what we need to understand is that it's about choice. Buhari had been in the corridors of power from his 20s when he was military administrator, before he became head of state, before he became chairman of Petroleum Trust Fund, and before he also became the 2-time civilian president. He perhaps been using the London hospital over decades, and that is the norm from time immemorial. Almost all our former presidents, Yar'Adua died in Saudi Arabian hospital, and it's not just Nigerian thing, it's an African thing. I quite agree that perhaps he could have spent significant resources to develop Nigerian healthcare system to be able to handle his health challenge. But again, it's about human rights issue. You may have a world-class facility in your own country. For the privacy of your disease, you may choose to go outside. And is of the privileged class of Nigeria. So you cannot subject him to willy-nilly having to do his attend to his healthcare system, healthcare in Nigeria. So that's the way I see it. It's desirable that we should have a world-class health facility in Nigeria. Remember, it was only his tenure that they said even the State House Clinic does not have a scan machine. The don't even have the basics, and tens of billions are annually budgeted for that facility, which never gets either released or misappropriated. So,
indeed. Well, while you've said this, do you think partisan politics affected the persona of Buhari?
Of course it did. He said he was a converted Democrat. His first tenure between December 31, 1983 to August 27, 1985, he was a military head of state who ruled autocratically, or if you choose to use the word in a draconian manner. Remember the war against indiscipline which he introduced, where soldiers whip people to queue up to be served, at bus stations, at marketplaces, at public places. And when people say, oh, this man has a military background and will not be amenable to a civil rule. But he said he's a turncoat, not turncoat, he is a converted Democrat.
That was Gideon Joy, public affairs analyst. And in sport news, Christopher Tito joins me for the latest update. Chris, what's up?
Emo, indeed, in sports this afternoon, we begin with some continental issues as the Black Queens of Ghana produced a commanding second half performance to claim 4-1 victory over Tanzania, still in their place in the knockout stage of the Total Energy CAF of Women's Cup of Nations ongoing in Morocco. And the Queens actually started bad on the note with losing to South Africa 2-0 and later drawing 1-1 with Mali. But the win over Tanzania gives them 4 points in the group, and then it helps them to qualify for the knockout stage of the competition. Now, Nigeria is also in the news because they have comfortably qualified from Group B with 7 points, and they are also going to face Zambia in the knockout stage of the ongoing competition come Friday, this very Friday in the competition. And that ends it for Sports Emo.
It's going to be a very tough one because Zambia is a tough nut to crack. Zambia is a very aspiring team, and we've seen their performances in this first round. Let's hope that the Falcons will be able to clutch their claws on the Zambian ladies.
Well, unfortunately, Senegal could not really make it to the knockout stage. They lost their last
really
2
sad
games.
about that, Sek. So sorry that the Lionesses could not go through. But thank you, Chris, for sport news. And that's it on this edition of Newslink on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Umudanugo for the technical support. Do connect with us on all of our social media platforms, X, Instagram at WDR News. And of course, I am Imo Eden. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0,
Hilltop Radio 104.7 FM,
and Veritas Radio 102.9 in Banjul, the Gambia. We also appreciate our listeners in Liberia via Alternative Youth Radio 98.9 FM, Lofa County,
Radio Kagama 94.5 FM, Nibe County, DCN Radio 91.3 FM, Riverside County, Wakat FM Radio, Banga, Liberia, Radio Baf FM 91.3 Sierra Leone.
For you listening via Radio Pad 95.1 Damango, Savannah region, and on Royals FM